You weren't supposed to be here tonight. You were supposed to go home, wash off the day, maybe scroll a little, maybe sleep early, but something pulled you. Out into the air, out into the noise, out into the warm, wet breath of the city. And that's how you ended up here under string lights strung like wishes across a rooftop you'd never stood on before, telling your secrets to someone you just met, as if your heart had known him long before your eyes did. This isn't a love story about forever. It's a love story about right now, about a quiet hour held between rain clouds and goodbye. So, close your eyes. Let the city fade. Let the sky fall quiet. You're not alone tonight. You're about to remember that night you didn't say goodnight. You didn't come here to meet anyone. That was never the plan. This wasn't a destination you circled on a map or whispered to a friend. It was just a dot between other places, chosen because it was far enough away from what you didn't want to feel anymore. The hotel sat like an afterthought at the edge of a too-busy city, high enough to offer a skyline you couldn't name, and private enough to let your breath slow without explanation. You booked it online in a rush. No special occasion, no luxury suite, just a room, just a key, just an address that didn't echo with memories. When you arrived, the lobby smelled like lemon polish and air conditioning, too bright, too clean. You avoided the receptionist's eyes, handed your ID across the counter like it weighed too much, and offered a smile that didn't quite reach your cheeks. The check-in process was efficient, almost comforting in its impersonality. She gave you a keycard, room 614, and told you the elevator was around the corner. You nodded. You didn't ask for a view. Now, standing at the door to 614, fingers trembling only slightly, you realize it's not the room you're nervous about, it's the silence. You push the door open. The lights blink to life with a soft click, and the room greets you like a stranger who doesn't ask questions. There's nothing remarkable about it: white sheets tucked tight into a queen-sized bed, neutral beige walls, a writing desk untouched by pens. But there's a stillness here that presses against your chest, not suffocating, just steady, as if the room is holding its breath with you. You drop your bag beside the bed without opening it. There's nothing in it that will make this space feel more like yours. A toothbrush, a novel you won't read, a sweater that still smells faintly, like someone you used to know. You slip off your shoes, the carpet beneath your feet unfamiliar and soft, and sit at the edge of the mattress. The silence hums. You don't cry. You thought you might, but the tears don't come. Not because you aren't sad, but because sadness feels too loud right now. What you feel is quieter, hollowed, like the inside of a seashell still shaped by what once filled it, but echoing only absence. The window across from the bed shows a slice of sky, dusky and heavy with city haze. You walk toward it slowly, one step at a time, like the view might shift something in you. You draw back the curtain. The world outside blinks with light cars crawling through narrow streets, the glow of street lamps casting halos on sidewalks, neon signs flickering in and out of coherence. But up above, further than your eye can trace, there's a rooftop garden. You can't see the plants, just the railing, just the idea of it. A hidden height, a place above the noise. You wonder if it's open. The thought arrives uninvited, but it stays. You turn away from the window and lie down, fully clothed, arms stretched out across the bed like you're waiting for something invisible to land on your chest. You stare at the ceiling. It stares back. There are no messages on your phone, You don't check twice. You could turn on the television, let the static voices fill the emptiness. You could scroll, swipe, pretend the world is smaller than it is, but instead, you sit up. Your legs move before your thoughts catch up. You open the door and step into the hallway. The carpet is patterned in swirling maroon and gold, the kind of design that makes you feel like a guest in your own life. You press the elevator button. It lights up instantly. You're not sure where you're going, only that your room felt like it was waiting for something, and you weren't it. The elevator dings. The doors open. You step in. There's no rooftop button, just numbered floors and one marked R in small, indifferent font. You press it. The elevator hums softly as it climbs, and in those few seconds, you think about how strange it is to be both running from and running to something you can't name. You left for space. You came for silence. But now, something is pulling you upward. A breeze you haven't felt yet. A sky you haven't looked at in years. The elevator slows. The doors open. You're not sure what you expected. A locked door, maybe. A forgotten maintenance hallway. But instead, there's a short corridor with dim lighting and a single push-bar door at the end. You walk toward it, every step echoing faintly. You press the bar dot, the door gives, and suddenly you're outside. The air is cooler than you imagined, touched by night but not chilled. You step onto the rooftop slowly, like you're entering a church. The city spreads out around you, a mosaic of motion and shadow and sparkle. The hum of traffic is distant, softened. There's a bench near the railing, a few scattered chairs, and soft bulbs strung above like stars, someone strung by hand, and there leaning against the far corner, half-shadowed, a bottle in his hand. And the skyline in his eyes is someone. You pause. He doesn't notice you at first. Or maybe he does, and just doesn't show it. You step forward, his head turns, his eyes meet yours. They're not intense, they're not probing, they're just steady. And suddenly, the silence between you doesn't feel so lonely. He raises the bottle slightly in greeting. You nod, and for the first time since you arrived, your shoulders soften. You walk toward him, not quickly, not carefully, just honestly. He doesn't ask why you're here. You don't ask why he is, either. Because maybe tonight isn't about reasons. Maybe tonight is just about being where the air is a little thinner, and the noise a little softer, and the loneliness a little less sharp, and so you sit down to strangers under low bulbs and high stars, not saying much, not needing to, because sometimes, the moment you step out of your room, you step into your story, and sometimes, someone's already there, waiting not for you, not for a name, just for the kind of silence that feels like home. You didn't expect anyone to be there, not when the elevator doors opened, not at that hour. Not with your head full of noise and your heart packed away in some corner of your chest you hadn't visited in a while. You had slipped into that metal box with the same hush you had entered the hotel lobby, half invisible, wrapped in your own breath, hoping not to be seen too clearly by anyone, especially yourself. But there he was, standing on the other side of the glass, as if waiting for no one in particular, and yet not surprised that it was you. His hands were tucked into the pockets of a slate-grey jacket, his shoulders relaxed, his expression unreadable except for one thing. That smile, not the kind of smile you learn to fake for polite company, not the kind that spreads like performance. Too eager, too bright. His was smaller, slower, as if he had smiled long before the doors opened and simply let it remain there when you stepped into view. It curved more on one side, almost hesitant, the way someone smiles when they recognize something they don't quite remember but trust anyway. You didn't return it right away. Your eyes caught his, and for a second you both just stood there, letting the city's thrum fall away beneath your feet. There was no greeting, no hello, just shared breath in a still hallway, and the quiet knowledge that neither of you came up here just for the view. He didn't ask your name. He didn't need to, and somehow that made you want to give it, but not yet. The space between you was still sacred in its uncertainty. He stepped aside gently, giving you room to join him by the railing, his body angled slightly toward you, but never too close. His presence didn't press. It didn't hover. It simply waited, like the rooftop itself offering space, offering sky, offering the chance to be alone. Together, the air up there tasted different, less recycled, more real. You let your fingers rest on the edge of the cool iron railing and tilted your head toward the lights below, blinking at how alive it all was, the restaurant still glowing, cars dragging red ribbons of brake lights. Across the avenue, tiny people still chasing their stories across midnight streets. And then you looked back at him. His hair was a little messy, like he'd run his hands through it more than once. There was stubble along his jaw, soft and uneven. He wore the kind of expression that made you wonder what he'd been thinking about before you arrived, because it wasn't boredom, it wasn't distraction, it was something gentler. The expression of someone who has grown used to being alone but hasn't stopped hoping for company. The kind of face that makes you want to say something true just to see if it changes. He offered the bottle then, not with a word, just a slight lift of his hand. It was nothing fancy, some local beer, barely chilled, half finished. You took it, more out of gesture than desire, and let your fingers brush his as you did. The contact was brief, accidental, and electric in the quietest way possible. Not jarring, not sudden, just enough to notice. Just enough to say, yes, I feel this, too. You leaned your elbows on the railing, both of you now facing the city like you were watching a slow, silent movie. He cleared his throat once, but didn't speak. You liked that. You liked that he didn't rush to fill the air with facts about himself, didn't default to the tired small talk that always felt more like armor than invitation. He was quiet in a way that felt deliberate, as if he knew that people open on their own when given enough stillness. As if he understood that not every silence needs to be broken, some simply need to be shared. When he finally did speak, it was with a voice that belonged to this night low, steady, tinged with something tired but not unkind. Funny, he said, not looking at you. I come up here most nights, never once run into anyone. He turned his head slowly, eyes finding yours. Not sure if I believe in coincidence anymore. You smiled, finally, just a little. What do you believe in? He shrugged, one shoulder rising under the collar of his jacket. Accidental timing, necessary detours, people showing up when they're supposed to, even if they don't know why. You didn't answer right away. You just took another sip from the bottle, let the city touch your skin again, and thought about all the things that had gone wrong this month. All the reasons you'd booked this hotel, all the aches you hadn't dared to name. And here was this man, this rooftop philosopher, speaking in the language of coincidence like it was sacred, not silly, like you being here mattered to him. Even if it had only just begun, the wind swept across your collarbone, soft and constant. You wrapped your arms around yourself and before you could even glance his way, he was already shrugging off his jacket. "Take it," he said, holding it out with one hand. "Only rule is you have to give it back when you're warm again." You hesitated, not because you didn't want it, but because you didn't want it so easily. But you took it anyway, slid your arms into the sleeves, still warm from his body. The scent was subtle clean, with something woodsy beneath it. You inhaled before you meant to. He watched you for a second longer than was casual, and when you turned to meet his gaze, he looked away not sheepishly, but gently, as if he didn't want to hold your eyes hostage. You both faced the skyline again. "This place feels like a secret," you said finally, your voice softer than you expected. "It is," he replied, smiling with that crooked curve again. "But some secrets get better when they're shared." The words didn't press. They landed like feathers between you, and somehow you knew you wouldn't go back to your room right away. Maybe not for a long while. Because here, on this rooftop, with a stranger and a sky too wide to carry alone, you had found something rare. Not romance. Not yet. Not magic. But possibility. The kind that only shows up when the elevator doors open, and someone you never planned on meeting is waiting there with a smile crooked just enough to feel honest, and a quiet strong enough to carry your secrets if you let them. You wonder now if you ever would have come up here if the door had been locked, if it had resisted you even slightly, required a code or a key card or some half-hearted excuse from the front desk. Maybe then you would have stayed inside your room, let the night settle into the space between clean sheets and your unanswered thoughts. Maybe you would have turned the television on low and let someone else's life unfold in pixelated confession. Maybe you would have paced, or cried, or watched the ceiling and felt time stretch and bend and pull. But the rooftop wasn't locked. And maybe that's all it takes sometimes. The door that opens to easily, and a part of you that needs to walk through it anyway. The air is wider up here. You hadn't realized how tightly the walls of room 614 were pressing in until they were behind you. The rooftop has no instructions, no signs, no cameras watching. It exists like a secret the building forgot to keep. There's no pool, no bar, just chairs scattered like an afterthought, and string lights above that sway in the hush of wind like they've been waiting for company. You sit, now, in one of those chairs, the stranger's jacket still draped around your shoulders like it knows more about you than anyone else in the city. He's sitting on the low edge of the brick wall, one foot balanced against the railing, one knee drawn up beneath his arm. He hasn't moved much since you arrived, but the space between you feels full, not crowded, just present. There's a beat of quiet between questions, that kind of silence that can only exist when no one is trying to impress anyone else. He doesn't ask what you do. You don't ask where he's from. Instead, you sit with the rhythm of the wind and the hum of distant traffic below, letting your bodies learn each other's outlines in the dark without touching. There is a strange safety in this shared, unnamed moment. It's the safety of knowing neither of you owe the other anything, and that what you are giving this pause, this nearness is enough. Eventually, he shifts, not to move away, not to interrupt the stillness, but just to say, "I come up here to breathe." You turn to him, intrigued by the simplicity of it. Not to think. He shakes his head gently. "I do too much of that down there, in the room, on the phone, on the ground, up here. I don't have to think, just exhale." You nod slowly. "Me too," you say, "though this is your first time on a rooftop like this, in a city that doesn't know your name." beside someone who didn't ask you to explain why you came. There's a pause, not awkward, not heavy, just a space left open, in case something honest decides to come in. You looked like you needed a place to land. He says, eyes not on you, but forward. I did, you admit. Still do, maybe. You surprise yourself with how quickly the words come, how little they demand to be hidden. There are people you've known for years who've never heard you speak this softly. People you've trusted who never ask questions with this much care. But here, on the rooftop, with the stranger beside you, the words come not like secrets escaping, but like truths finally resting. You didn't seem surprised to see me, you say. He smiles, a small thing that curves into his cheek but doesn't show teeth. I wasn't. Why? He glances at you now, slow and steady. Because this kind of night always finds two people at the same time. The sentence lingers, delicate but firm. You can't tell if it's something he read somewhere, or if it's just his way of thinking. Either way, it makes you want to stay longer. You lean back, the chair creaking slightly beneath you, and let your eyes tilt upward. The stars aren't many. The city hides most of them. But there are a few, stubborn and small, scattered like punctuation in an unfinished sentence. You count them without counting. You feel them without naming. And beside you, the stranger, this man, with a bottle and a voice that speaks like it's already heard, your story doesn't break the moment. He lets you drift. Eventually, you ask, so what made you come up here tonight? He shrugs. Same thing as always. Probably the air, the space, the fact that no one knows me here. You turn toward him again. You don't want to be known. His answer takes a moment. I do, he says quietly. But only the parts one choose. You ever feel that? You nod, because you do. More than you can say. That strange dance of wanting to be seen and simultaneously terrified of being known too well. The ache of intimacy brushing against the fear of exposure. Yeah, you whisper, all the time. He exhales, like the word itself was something you both needed. And in that breath, something shifts. You offer him the bottle back. He takes it, drinks, then sets it on the ground beside him. Neither of you moves, neither of you speaks, but in the silence, something grows. Not attraction, exactly, though that's there too, but something more tender. A curiosity wrapped in calm. A comfort not in what could happen, but in what's happening now. He reaches down and picks up a pebble, tosses it gently over the edge, and watches it fall. You imagine it never lands. That somewhere beneath the sound, it's still falling, still tracing the arc of a night that hasn't decided where it ends. I don't know what I expected tonight. You say, almost to yourself. But it wasn't this. What did you expect? He asks, not with challenge, but with that same steady interest that's marked every word he's offered you so far. I thought I'd be alone, you admit. I thought I needed to be, and now you don't answer right away. The truth is, you still feel alone, but less so, in a different way. Like someone found you in the middle of the sea and didn't try to rescue you. Just floated beside you until you weren't afraid of the water anymore. Now I'm not sure what I need, you say, but I'm glad the door was open. He nods slowly, like he understands more than he's letting on. So am I. You let your gaze settle on him again, really looking now. His eyes are the color of dusk. His posture is that of someone who sat with pain long enough to stop flinching from it. And there's a kindness in him that doesn't announce itself. It just lives in the way he listens. the way he's still here. You find your arms folding across your chest, not defensively, but thoughtfully, and after another breath, you ask the question that's been resting beneath your tongue since you've sat down. Do you stay here often? His smile returns, just once in a while. When the noise gets too loud, you nod. Me too. There's a silence again, but it's warmer now. It wraps around your shoulders like his jacket, familiar, shared, and the longer you sit, the more you realize something rare is happening. Not a flirtation, not a seduction, but a slowing, a moment, drawn out like the last note of a song, allowed to echo, to hum, to stay. And even though the rooftop wasn't locked, even though anyone could have come, tonight it feels like it opened just for the two of you, to people who didn't come looking for anything, but who stayed because something gentle met them anyway. The night has settled now, not in a way that signals an ending, but like a blanket finally finding your shoulders. The wind is quieter. The buzz of the city has softened into something distant and dreamy, like it no longer needs your attention. Above you, the bulbs, strung between metal poles, sway gently, casting slow golden circles across the rooftop tiles. You've never felt this far away from everything. You've never felt this close to something unnamed. You're still sitting beside him, a little closer now than when you first arrived. Not touching, not crowding, just near enough that when he shifts, you feel the movement before you see it. He hasn't spoken in several minutes. You haven't either. And still, nothing feels missing. He picked up the bottle again earlier, drank without offering it this time, and you didn't mind. You didn't want anything from his hand. Just this moment, just this quiet, just his presence, a steady pulse against the rhythm of a night that's not asking you to perform. He's looking up now, and you follow his gaze. The stars still fight for space against the city's glow. A plane blinks across the sky, a soft red dot gliding toward elsewhere. You wonder where it's going, who's inside it. If someone down below is watching it disappear and feeling what you feel, now like everything is both too far and suddenly too close. Then he turns to you, not abruptly, just gently, like the moment decided for him. What are you running from? He asks the question isn't cruel. It doesn't cut. It doesn't even sting. It lands more like a palm across your back. A quiet hand letting you know someone sees the weight you didn't name. You don't answer right away. Your breath catches not because you didn't expect the question, but because part of you has been waiting for it. Not from a friend, not from someone who's already woven into your life, but from someone who doesn't need the context. Someone who won't tell you what to do with the answer. Just hold it like a pebble in their pocket and walk beside you anyway. You look at him for a moment before speaking, trying to decide how much to give, but he doesn't look away. He holds your gaze without pressure, without expectation, just stillness, and you say, myself, maybe. He doesn't flinch, just nods once, like he understands. You look back out toward the edge of the rooftop, where the city spills over like a tipped bowl of light. You're not sure where to begin, but your voice is already moving. I've been tired, you say softly. Not in the way you sleep off, but the kind of tired that lives in your ribs, that makes everything feel too loud or not loud enough. You pause, surprised at how easily the words form. I came here thinking I needed to be alone, but I think I was just afraid of being seen, or worse, of not being. He doesn't respond immediately. He lets you sit with what you said, like he knows some truths are fragile after being spoken, and if someone replies too quickly, they might break. You continue, your fingers tracing patterns in the condensation on the bottle now resting between. I've been in rooms with people who love me and still felt like I was underwater. I've sat through dinners, conversations, whole weekends and left feeling like no one really looked at me. You pause again and then laugh just a little, just a breath of disbelief. Isn't that ridiculous? Wanting to be invisible and then hating when you are. It's not ridiculous, he says, voice low. It's human. And then he's quiet again. You don't need him to explain. That's the thing about this night, it doesn't demand resolution. Just honesty. You tilt your head, studying him now with a little more boldness. What about you, you ask? What are you running from? He smiles at that. Not smug, not evasive, just a little crooked, a little familiar, like he's heard the question before and never quite answered it the same way twice. My father used to say, he begins, that a man should never run. But he was always running from something. His job, his reflection, his own kids, sometimes. He leans forward now, elbows on knees, looking toward the city with eyes that see something farther than what's in front of him. I didn't realize I'd inherited it, the running, until I found myself changing apartments every 6 months and deleting phone numbers that didn't need deleting. I don't even know what I'm running from most days. Maybe guilt, maybe the version of myself that makes promises. I guess I feel safer when no one expects anything. He looks at you again, and up here, no one expects anything. You nod, because it's true, and because it feels good to hear it out loud. There's a strange intimacy in exchanging stories with someone you may never see again, like you're both putting messages in bottles and handing them directly into each other's palms. No ocean, no drift, just here, just now. You shift in your seat, turning toward him more fully. Does it help, you ask, running? No, telling the truth like this. Does it help? He considers that for a while, eyes flicking back toward the string lights swaying above. It doesn't fix anything, he says, but it makes the ache quieter. Like when you name something, it stops hiding in your chest. You like that, you sit with it. You let the idea breathe between you. Neither of you moves to fill the silence this time. You let it stretch and wrap around you. Let it carry the weight of what was just shared. A car horn rises up from the street. A dog barks. A siren wails, then fades. Life continues just beneath your feet. But here, on this small patch of concrete, under swaying lights, and a sky pretending to be clear, you and a stranger have pulled something from your chests and laid it between you, not for analysis, not for rescue, but for recognition, and somehow, that's enough. It's strange how icily the truth starts to fall out of you when the night is deep enough, when the stars, what few the city allows, stare back with no judgment. Some people think it takes alcohol to loosen a tongue. Others believe it's time, years of building trust before walls come down. But there's something about this rooftop, about this silence you've both decided to share, that has made the truth feel less like a confession and more like a gift. Like offering a piece of yourself, not because it aches, but because someone finally paused long enough to receive it. He leans back now, resting on his palms, his body stretched toward the sky like it belongs more up there than below. You sit beside him with your knees tucked to your chest, the hem of your dress brushing your shins, the air pressing cool fingertips against your collarbone. You're still wrapped in his jacket. It's far too big for you, the sleeves swallowing your hands, but somehow that only makes it feel safer. like you're tucked inside something that might hold even the heaviest things you carry. You're not sure how it started. One moment you were talking about people who disappoint you, and then suddenly you were telling him about your mother, about how she used to call during thunderstorms because they scared her, even though she'd never admit it. About how you hated those calls when you were younger, how you wished she'd just let you sleep, and how now that she's gone you leave your ringer on every time it rains, just in case. And he didn't interrupt. He didn't offer hollow comfort. He just nodded, quiet and steady, letting the words land where they wanted. He listened the way most people don't, not to reply, not to offer a matching pain, but to make space for yours. You laugh suddenly. Not because anything's funny, but because of how surreal it feels to be sitting here, saying things you've never said out loud, to a man whose last name you don't even know. You must think I'm a mess. You say, your voice barely more than a breath. He shakes his head. No, he murmurs. I think you're honest. You turn to him, surprised by the ease in his tone. Is that rare? He meets your gaze, and something in his eyes sharpens not with judgment, but with a kind of sad knowing. Yeah, he says. It is. And just like that, another secret slips from your lips. I was engaged once. You say, surprising yourself with the weight of it. A long time ago, he was kind, too kind. The kind of kind that makes you feel guilty for every flaw. You look away, embarrassed for reasons you can't name. I left. No big fight, no betrayal. Just, I looked at the life ahead of me and saw a stranger in it. And that scared me more than being alone. He listens, still, no interruption. Just presence. I thought that made me a coward, you whisper. Everyone told me I was making a mistake. And were you? He asks softly. You shake your head, slowly. No, I think I was just being honest for the first time. He lets that sit for a while. Then he pulls something from his percutter. Small, worn silver lighter. He flicks it once, watches the flame catch, then lets it die. You can tell it's an old habit, a nervous one maybe. A rhythm he falls into when he doesn't want to speak just yet. I used to smoke, he says finally. Quit a year ago. But I still carry this. Why, you ask, tilting your head. Because there are some things you can't burn out of yourself completely, he answers. And some nights, like this sigh, remember how good it felt to hold something that disappears slowly. You smile, and it's a sad smile, but a real one. Like secrets. He laughs gently. Exactly. He pulls out a single cigarette tonally, one and lights it. He doesn't offer you one. Just takes a drag and exhales slowly, watching the smoke curl into the air like a story too delicate to be told straight. Mind if I share this one with the ghosts? He asks. You shake your head. Go ahead. I think mine are already here. He takes another drag and offers the cigarette your way. You hesitate, then take it not because you want it, but because of what it symbolizes. You hold it between your fingers, feel the warmth, the weight of it. Then you don't inhale. You just watch it burn, quietly, together, and for the next stretch of time. That's what you do, trade stories and silence. Pass the cigarette back and forth like it's some kind of ritual. You talk about the time you left a letter on someone's porch and never got a reply. He tells you about his sister who moved overseas and stopped calling, not out of anger, but absence. You tell him about a song that makes you cry every time. He tells you about a dream he had 5 years ago that he can't forget. They're not grand stories. They don't build a plot. They're small truths, loose threads, but together they start to form something unexpected, a soft kind of intimacy, not the kind that demands a kiss, the kind that makes you feel known. At one point, the wind kicks up. You pull the jacket tighter, and his hand brushes against yours to help. It's not a move, it's not calculated, it's instinct, and you let it stay there. His fingers wrap lightly around yours, and for a while, that's all. Two hands resting between two strangers who don't feel quite like strangers anymore. The night hums around you. The city pulses beneath. But up here, everything has slowed to something sacred. Eventually, the cigarette burns down. He stubs it out on the concrete. Neither of you reach for another. You sit back in your chair, eyes half closed, the warmth of his hand still lingering on your skin. Do you ever wish, you say quietly, that someone would just look at you and see everything you've survived without you having to say a word? He doesn't answer right away. Then yeah, he says, but tonight, I think I'd rather tell you myself. And that's the thing about this moment. It's not about escaping. It's not about forgetting. It's about the rare chance to be seen, not just for what you show, but for what you offer. And up here, with the stars fading and the secrets shared, you don't feel messy anymore. You just feel real. Some people tell their stories, like songs, rhythmic, practiced, memorized for dinner tables and first dates, structured in verses that rise and fall in a way they've come to control. But he doesn't, not him. The stranger with the smoke-soft voice and the sad eyes shaped by long silences. His story comes in pieces, half-sentences, and sudden pauses. Memories that don't follow a timeline, truths that fall out when the night gets still enough. It begins with his brother. Not in the way most people talk about family, but as a small interruption in the middle of a sentence about favorite books. He's tracing the rim of the empty bottle now, his fingers slow, steady, almost unaware. He used to read me things out loud, he says suddenly, even when I was too old for it, just because I couldn't sleep, just to keep the dark from feeling so final. You wait. You don't push. You just let him speak when he's ready. He died when I was 17, he says. Not with drama, not with emphasis, just the truth, folded carefully like a worn photograph. Car accident. He was supposed to be driving me that night. I changed my plans last minute, so he went alone. You don't breathe for a moment. Not because you don't know what to say, but because you understand that there is no right thing to say. There's only presence. And yours, right now, is enough. He glances at you, once, quickly. Sorry, he says, like he's embarrassed. For saying too much. You shake your head. Don't be. It's quiet again. The kind of quiet that fills itself with the weight of what's just been shared. He doesn't cry. You don't ask him to. Instead, he sighs softly, like he's been carrying that sentence for a long time and finally let it sit down. Then he tells you about the road trips they used to take, just the two of them, that they would play a game where they'd make up new identities at every diner, that his brother once pretended to be a wildlife photographer from Iceland, even though he'd never seen snow in real life. He smiles when he says that. It's a small smile, fragile, but it stays. A little longer this time. You find yourself leaning in, not physically, but emotionally, letting your body match the rhythm of his story, the way you might sway with someone else's song. Then he stops. He looks up, and the wind carries a softer note between you. I don't talk about him much, he says. Why now? He shrugs. Maybe because you're not trying to fix it. Or maybe because I don't have to see you again tomorrow, and that makes it easier. You nod, because you understand. There's a strange safety in the temporary, in a face you trust, simply because it's here, not because it's obligated to stay. In knowing that the honesty you offer tonight won't be dragged into tomorrow unless you want it to. You shift in your seat, the chair creaking slightly under you, and wrap the jacket tighter around your chest. His scent is softer now, familiar, like something the night has worn smooth. He starts talking again, not just about his brother now, but about his childhood home. The one with the broken mailbox and the cracked tiles in the kitchen, he says. His mum used to keep lavender in the windowsill, even though it never grew right. That his dad used to whistle without realizing it. That there was always a dog, always music, always something half-finished. You imagine it as he speaks, not like a house you've seen, but like a place you've been dreaming of, the kind of memory that belongs to someone else but still feels like yours. He mentions that he moved out at 19, that he thought independence would feel like freedom, but mostly it just felt like silence with rent. He worked late-night jobs, ate cold, leftovers on the floor of his apartment, didn't call home enough. He says this like an apology whispered into the wind. You sit with him in that apology. You don't rush him forward. You let each sentence arrive when it wants to. Then he tells you something small, something you didn't expect. That's why I started coming up here, he says. When I found this rooftop, it reminded me of the garage back home, the way it always smelled like the night, like secrets you didn't have to say out loud. You turn to him, watching the way the light cuts across his jaw. He looks younger now, or maybe just more open. The hardness around his mouth has softened. The space between his shoulders is no longer heavy with the need to hold it all in. What about you? He asks, finally. Where did you come from tonight, before this? Rooftop. You think about your room 614, the white sheets that didn't warm, the silence that rang too loud, the ceiling that watched you back. You think about how much of that room was filled with questions you didn't want to answer, and how strange it feels now to answer them here instead. Nowhere special, you say, and then, everywhere I was tired of pretending. He nods slowly, like he hears that. You both fall quiet again. The city glows around you. A siren in the distance, a door slamming below, the hush of late-night wheels on wet pavement. But none of it touches this rooftop. None of it breaks the spell. Then he stands, not abruptly, just gently. He walks a few steps toward the edge of the roof, leans on the railing, looking down. His silhouette stretches across the tile like a shadow, unsure of where to end. You follow, you join him at the rail. For a moment, you both just look at nothing in particular. The blinking red light of a tower, the wind brushing against your skin, the slow dance of a leaf caught in the air between buildings. He glances sideways. I don't usually talk this much, he says. Me either. And that's the heart of it. The thing that neither of you says directly, but both understand. This night wasn't supposed to be anything. And yet, somehow, it's become everything soft you didn't know you needed. Then, quietly, he says, thank you. For what? For listening, he says. For not asking more than I could give. You smile, and the rooftop smiles with you. Because this isn't a story about falling in love, not yet. It's a story about being allowed to unravel. About finding someone at the right hour who says nothing and still hears everything. About speaking not for answers, but for and tonight. Under city lights and rooftop shadows, His story doesn't need to be finished. It just needs to be held, and you hold it gently, like a flame cupped in your palms. You've been standing beside him for long enough now that the edge of the rooftop feels like a threshold, one you've both approached, but neither of you has. Crossed, your arms rest easily on the cold railing. His body is close, but not pressed. The sky stretches wide above you, wearing its quiet like an old coat, stitched with stars and fragments of distant plains. Below, the city hums on in its own language of sleeplessness. But up here, the air moves differently. It carries pause. It carries presence. You haven't spoken in 10 minutes, maybe more. There's no discomfort in the silence, just something that grows gently in the space between your shoulders, something that settles in your chest like a truth you've always known but never dared to believe. You're not touching him. He's not touching you. And still, the air feels thick with closeness, as if your skin knows he's near before your thoughts can explain it. Every time you shift slightly, you notice he mirrors you, without trying. When you lean forward to rest your elbows, so does he. When you exhale slowly, his breath follows just a second later. You're in sync, and yet not tangled. You exist side by side like two chords in a song that hasn't been written yet. And you wonder how long this has been happening, this quiet choreography. If it began the moment you stepped onto the rooftop, or earlier, when the elevator doors opened and you first saw his crooked smile. The world has narrowed, not in a suffocating way, in the way a camera narrows its focus. You're aware, distantly, that the night is still unfolding for other people elsewhere. A hotel lobby still turns. A television plays to no one. A bed in room 614 waits untouched. But those are someone else's stories now. Yours is here. You glance sideways and catch him looking at you, not with intensity, not with desire, but with something deeper. Recognition, maybe, or quiet wonder. Like he's surprised you're still here, and even more surprised by how right it feels. He doesn't look away when you meet his eyes. Neither do you. There's no coyness in the moment, just stillness. Just yes, but still neither of you moves it. It would be easy to take a step closer, to let your hand graze his, to shift your weight until your shoulders touch. But the strange, beautiful truth is you don't need to. You're already there, in a space where movement isn't required to feel near, where the very act of not reaching out says everything about how sacred this nearness is. He breaks eye contact first, but not abruptly, just a slow return of his gaze to the skyline, as if the city called his attention back for a moment. You stay where you are, heartbeat steady, letting the feeling between you stay whole and unspoken. Then he speaks, not loudly, just enough for the wind to carry it. You know that feeling, he says, when a song plays and it sounds exactly like how your chest feels. You nod slowly. Yes, like the music already knew. He smiles. That's what this moment feels like. You don't reply right away. Your throat tightens, but not with sadness, with softness, with that ache that only comes when someone names a thing you hadn't found words for yet. I was just thinking the same. You whisper, and still, neither of you moves. You think, suddenly, about how rare this is. Not just the connection, but the patience of it, the quiet, the lack of pressure. So many nights have asked you to hurry. So many people have reached for your hand before they learned how to hold your silence. But here, nothing is rushed. Nothing is expected. You're allowed to exist in exactly the way you are. Quiet, reflective, cautious, alive. He shifts his weight slightly, and for a brief second, your arms touch, just at the elbows. A soft contact that could be coincidence, but neither of you pulls away. Instead, you both stay, breathing side by side, anchored not by words or action, but by mutual permission. I think I used to confuse touch with closeness. You say, after a while, he glances at you, waiting you continue. I thought being held meant being seen, that the only way to feel wanted was to feel someone's hands on me. He nods, understanding something in your voice. But now, you whisper, I feel more seen just standing here than I've felt in years. His eyes hold yours again and again. They don't ask anything from you. They don't flicker downward. They don't widen with longing. They just stay. I see you, he says. 3 words, nothing more. But they land inside you like a seed in warm soil. You don't even know how to respond. You just let the words echo in your chest, bounce off the ribcage, settle behind your heart like a light. A moment later, he says, you don't have to prove anything tonight. You blink slowly. Not to me, he adds, not to yourself. You hadn't realized how tightly you'd been holding your breath until now. There's a kind of disarming that happens when someone doesn't demand your story, doesn't ask for your affection, doesn't pull you toward the next moment. When someone just lets you be, you feel yourself exhale fully. Not just the air in your lungs, but the weight of it, the fear, the invisible pressure to explain who you are and why you're here, and what this night might mean. None of that is asked for, and because of that, something inside you begins to open. Not your legs, not your lips, but yourself, that buried part, that quiet self, the one who rarely comes to the surface because the world moves too fast, and people often meet you with expectation instead of wonder. But not him, not here. He glances toward the sky again. It's almost 3. You're surprised by how much time has passed. The night has bent itself around you, reshaped its edges to make room for the 2 of you. There's no fatigue in your limbs, just a quiet fullness, the kind that only comes from stillness that matters. I don't want to go, and yet, you say. He smiles softly. Me neither. And so you don't. You stay, closer now than before, but still without reaching, still without touching more than the air between you, because sometimes closeness isn't about contact, it's about consent, about slowness, about the sacredness of being in sync. And tonight, you found that, not in a kiss, not in a bed, but in a hush, in a rooftop, in the way his breath matches yours, even when no one's counting. The sky doesn't give you a warning, not the kind people usually notice. There's no crack of thunder yet, no sudden cold wind curling around your ankles, but you can feel it. Something in the air has changed. The way the city lights shimmer differently across the rooftops, how the clouds have thickened into shapes that look like thoughts not yet spoken. It's in the way the wind hesitates, like it's gathering breath. And it's in the way your heart picks up, just slightly, not with panic but with presence. You're still at the railing, both of you silent, your arms almost touching now without question. The jacket he gave you has warmed to your skin, and the metal beneath your fingertips no longer bites like it did earlier, accepts you, holds you. A thin curl of hair escapes from behind your ear, lifted by the new tension in the breeze, and you don't brush it away. You let the night arrange you as it wants. He notices it too, the shift. You feel it in the way his posture changes, a breath taken and not quite exhaled. The space between your bodies is still careful, still respectful, but it pulses now with something different. Not pressure, not hunger, just potential. The clouds move slow above you, layering shadows across the rooftop. There's a rhythm to it, like waves beginning to roll toward a far shore. You wonder if it will rain, and if it does, whether either of you would even notice, or leave, or care. Do you hear that? He says quietly. You listen. There's a faint electric hum in the air, not a sound exactly, but a feeling behind your ears, like the city is holding its breath. Yes, you whisper, it's coming. He turns toward you, slowly, his body just slightly angled now, enough that you feel the gravity shift. Do storms scare you? He asks, his voice wrapped in calm. You think for a moment, only when I feel alone in them. He nods, like he knows exactly what you mean. I used to stand on the porch when I was a kid, he says. Even when the lightning got close, I'd close my eyes and count between the flash and the thunder, not to measure the distance, just to feel part of something larger. You smile. I used to count too, but I always whispered my name with the numbers, like the storm needed to know I was there. He laughs gently, then quieter. Maybe that's what storms are for, reminding us we still exist. You turn toward him fully now, your arms still on the railing, but your body angled inward, and he does the same. You're facing each other more honestly now, more openly. And even though neither of you steps forward, the space between you has changed shape. It's no longer just absence. It's anticipation. The first lightning flicker comes not with drama, but like a match struck in a distant room. A soft silver glow that stretches across the horizon, barely loud enough to register. Still, it reaches both your faces, and in that second, you see him more clearly. The color of his eyes under the shadow, the lines beside his mouth, the way his lips part ever so slightly like they're about to speak, but instead just feel. He watches you, but not in a way that takes Dot. He watches like he's remembering this moment before it's even passed. Another flicker, brighter, this time followed by a faint roll of thunder. A low murmur that shakes the sky like a whisper with weight. You don't flinch, neither does he, but something in you answers it. The way your hand now finds the edge of your jacket, the way your fingers fidget without meaning to, the way you shift. Your feet closer, not enough to touch, but enough to feel him like warmth in a dream. He sees it, you know he does, but he doesn't move toward you. He doesn't reach, he waits. Not in hesitation, in reverence. You're not used to that. Someone waiting not out of doubt, but out of respect. Someone letting a moment bloom at its own pace. And so, you step forward. Just an inch. Just enough that your arm grazes his. This time, the contact holds. Still, he doesn't look down. He keeps his gaze at eye level, like everything he needs to know is there. I feel like the sky is listening, you say quietly. He nods, so speak. And you do, not with words, but by standing. They're open, letting your body say yes, letting the hush between you glow. The thunder is louder now, closer. The lightning cracks sharper, illuminating the sky like a camera flash. And in that light, for a heartbeat, you think I could kiss him. Not because you should, not because you need to, but because everything in the air has led here. Not a conclusion, not a climax, just a quiet crossing over, and then the rain begins. It starts soft, like fingertips tapping glass, like the rooftops sighing. It paints the concrete in slow, dark circles, spreading outward from nothing. You both feel it at the same time. Neither of you moves to run. Instead, you tilt your head up, let it fall on your face. It's cool, gentle, not yet wild, just present. Your hair begins to dampen. A drop slides down your cheek like a tear you didn't cry. He watches you with a look that isn't desire, but something deeper, like he's grateful to be here, to witness this version of you, the rain-lit, real you, the one who doesn't shrink from storms anymore. And then finally, softly, he says, "Can I?" You nod, just once. That's all it takes. He steps in, slow, careful, not to claim, just to meet. His hands find your cheeks, not with urgency, but with awe. And then, in the quiet, before the next thunder, he kisses you. The kiss is gentle, like the first line of a poem, like a page turned in a book you've been waiting to read. His lips are soft, but certain. Your hands find his chest, steadying yourself not from falling, but from floating. The rain grows bolder now, but neither of you flinch. You're soaked in seconds, but it doesn't matter. You're warm, you're lit from within. You kiss like the lightning might forget to flash, like the thunder might pause to listen, like the city might forget to buzz, just for you. And when you part, barely, foreheads touching, breath shared, he smiles against your skin and says nothing, because nothing needs to be said. You've already spoken, in the hush between the lightning, in the silence before the storm found you. The rain is no longer gentle. It has turned bold, unshe, relentless in that summer storm way that drenches you with no apology. The kind of rain that forces other people to run for cover. But you're still standing there, under the open sky, beside a man whose lips just touched yours like he'd been holding the idea of you all night in his chest, and only now found the courage to let it bloom. You could go inside. The door is still there, a few feet behind you, waiting with its quiet warmth and yellow hallway. Lights, but you don't move. Neither does he. The storm has become your roof now, and your soaked skin doesn't feel cold. It feels alive. Every drop landing on you feels like a reminder. You're here, you're still here. He lets out a small laugh, one of those half-disbelieving sounds people make when something is more perfect than they expected. His hands are still hovering near your shoulders, like he's afraid the moment might dissolve if he holds it too tightly. Water drips from his hair. His shirt clings to him now, darkened by rain, and you can see the shape of him more clearly. Not just his chest or collarbones, but the way he holds himself, the posture of someone who's never quite let himself be seen until now. You reach up, slow and deliberate, brushing your fingers through your own wet hair, trying to tuck it behind your ear, though it doesn't stay. He watches you, not the way people watch a body, but the way someone watches a flame they don't want to disturb. "I should be freezing," you say softly. He nods, same. But neither of you shivers. "Not yet, not now." "I don't want to go back in," you add. More honestly, he doesn't answer with words. Instead, he turns, gestures toward the middle of the rooftop where the chairs still sit under now pointless string lights, and walks over. Rain spatters the metal as he drags two of them together. He doesn't wipe them dry, just sits and waits. You follow. You don't hesitate. You sit beside him, your knees bumping his just slightly. You both face out toward the edge again, as if the city still has something to tell you. The rain continues to fall, threading through your eyelashes, tracing lines down your throat, and still, It doesn't bother you. Still, you do not retreat. Neither of you speaks for a long time. And yet everything between you is a conversation. The way your legs rest near his, the way your shoulders almost, but don't quite, lean in, the way your fingers now lie open on your lap, not reaching for his hand, but not closed to the possibility. It's strange, you think, how easy it is to stay here. You've known him for just a handful of hours, less, maybe. Time has warped itself around the silence you shared and the kiss you just gave. But what you know of him feels like something longer than memory. His presence doesn't feel like a stranger's anymore. It feels like something you've circled toward without realizing. I think, he says finally, I'm going to remember this for a long time. You smile, slow and real. Me too, you whisper. The rain begins to slow a little, softening around the edges. Not ending, just loosening its grip. The thunder rolls farther away now, leaving you in a hush that feels earned. The lights above flicker once, a single pulse of uncertainty, then hold steady. He leans back in the chair, stretching his legs. His arm brushes yours again, but this time he leaves it there. You don't move either. Contact isn't dramatic now. It's just natural, I keep thinking. You say that this feels like a dream. He turns his head toward you. Why? Because I don't usually let myself stay in moments like this, you admit. I'm always planning the ending, the exit, the story. I'll tell about it later. And this one, he asks. I don't want it to end yet, you say. He doesn't smile at that, not in the romantic, triumphant way. He just nods, serious and gentle, like your words deserve reverence. Then, very slowly, he turns toward you in full, not looming, just shifting. And with one motion, he lifts your hand in both of his, presses it between his palms like a shared warmth. You look down, watching the way your fingers fit. His thumb strokes once across your knuckle, not suggestive, not urgent, just real. We don't have to go anywhere, he says, and for the first time in a very long time. You believe someone when they say that. The sky begins to clear above you. Not completely, but enough that a patch of stars peeks through the parting. Clouds. You both look up, and the air is different. Now washed, rinsed, new. You sit that way for a while, hand in his, bodies damp and glowing. You speak, sometimes small things. You tell him about a poem you once wrote and never showed anyone. He tells you about a moment in college when he thought he might become a musician but didn't. You laugh about things that shouldn't be funny, the way your wet clothes stick, the way your soaked shoes squeak. You talk about absolutely nothing, and it's perfect. There's no agenda here. You're not trying to become something. You're not searching for what comes next. You're simply in it. Two people, letting a night happen without interfering. Eventually, your body leans toward his, not because you decide to, but because stillness is easier when shared. Your head finds his shoulder. He lets you rest there. His cheek turns toward your hair, and the rain slows into something that feels almost like sleep. You close your eyes not because you're tired, but because you want to feel the moment more completely. His breathing deepens. Yours follows. You don't know how much time passes. It doesn't matter. The world outside this rooftop will wake up soon. Someone will check out of a room. Someone will chase a bus. The lobby will hum with morning voices and clinking mugs. But none of that belongs to this hour. This hour is still yours, and you don't go back inside yet, because the night is not done with you, because some storms end not in chaos, but in quiet. Because closeness doesn't always ask for more. Sometimes it just asks you to stay, and you do, together under the wet hush of a sky that finally remembered how to be soft. Dawn is still far off, but the air has changed again. The storm has spent itself. What's left behind is not absence, but aftermath, quiet so full it feels like music that chose not to be written down. The rooftop smells like whetstone and sky. A breeze, light and curious, combs through your damp hair. The lights around you flicker once, then stay steady, casting everything in that soft, forgiving glow that comes only after something wild has passed. You're still resting against him. His shirt is cold where your cheek touches, but his body is warm, steady. He hasn't moved. He's let you stay there, unmoving, for what feels like an entire chapter of your life. And now, as you shift your weight slightly, he moves only enough to meet you halfway, his shoulder adjusting to carry you without needing to be asked. He carries silence the way some people carry songs, not out of avoidance, not out of awkwardness, but like it's sacred, like the hush between words matters more than anything you might fill it with. Most people, you've found, get uncomfortable after the kiss. They fill the space with explanation, questions, a nervous glance at the time, or a joke about how wet their shoes are, but not him. He carries the quiet like it belongs, like it is, in itself, the answer, and maybe it is. Because even as your fingers shift along his arm, even as your shoulder warms against his chest, you don't feel the need to ask what this night means. You don't need to label it or define its perimeter. All you need to know is what it is. Now, and now is enough. You breathe out slowly, not realizing until that moment that you'd been holding on to a little tension in your ribcage. The kind of holding that comes from years of trying to shrink yourself into rooms where you weren't meant to fit. But here, next to him, under this rooftop sky with its silvered clouds and fading thunder, there is space. And not just around you, within you. He senses your exhale. You feel it in the way his hand settles gently over yours, palm to palm, no grip, no squeeze, just placement, just presence. Do you always get this quiet? You ask, voice hushed. Not from fear, but from respect for the moment. Only when it feels this good, he replies. You glance up. His face is tilted toward the clouds again. Not like he's searching for something. Just ... participating. He's not waiting for stars or listening for answers. He's just here, with you. With the rain-slicked chairs and the forgotten hour and the smell of ozone clinging to the railing. I like your quiet, you whisper. He smiles. It's small, real. Like he doesn't need to perform gratitude for the compliment. He just receives it. Accepts that part of himself can be seen. I like yours too, he says. It's not the kind of quiet that pulls away. It's the kind that listens. And maybe that's the first moment you feel something inside you soften completely. Because you've been quiet before, with other people. But it always felt like a void. Like a blank they didn't know what to do with. Like silence was a mistake. But here, your quiet is part of the conversation. It's not waiting to be filled. It is the filling. The rain has almost stopped now. Drops still slide from the tips of the railing. A puddle gleams at your feet, rippling gently with the softest wind. But the storm's breath has gone. You lean back a little, not away from him, but to stretch your limbs. His arm stays close, warm and waiting if you choose to return. You run your fingers through your wet hair, wiping moisture from your neck, and for the first time, you realize how long you've been out here. Time hasn't disappeared, it's simply been suspended. How long do you think we've been out? Here, you ask. He checks nothing. Not a watch, not a phone. He shrugs. Long enough to forget what time means. He says, you grin. That's dangerous. He turns to face you more directly, his eyes half-shadowed under the light. Or, it's exactly what we needed. You nod, because it's true. Time has too often been a chain around your neck, always rushing, always asking what comes next. But here, on this rooftop, with rain drying into memory, time became irrelevant. All that mattered was this. You rise slowly, stretching your arms above your head. Your shirt clings to your body, transparent in places, but you don't care. You're not on display here. You're not being watched. You're being seen. There's a difference. You feel it in the way his gaze doesn't change. Still warm, still. Not possessive, not hungry, just present. He stands too, mirroring you. His body straightens, shakes a bit of water from his sleeves. You both walk toward the railing again, side by side, this time with less space between your steps. When you reach the edge, the city has softened too. The glow of buildings is less harsh now. Streetlights blink yellow against the damp pavement. Below, far off, you hear a trainer, low, soothing rumble. I don't think I've ever felt this calm in a city before, you murmur. Me neither, he says. Maybe it's not the city. You glance at him. Maybe it's us. He doesn't speak, just reaches out slowly and tucks a strand of wet hair behind your ear. His touch is light, reverent, like he's still learning the language of your skin and doesn't want to speak it too loudly. And for the first time, you lean forward not to kiss, not to ask, but just to rest your forehead against his, a breath. Between two bodies, the space where something sacred lives. Neither of you says a word. You don't need to. He carries the quiet. And now, you do too. Not like a burden, like a gift. It's quiet now, in that way cities rarely allow. Not the silence of absence, but the hush of something completed, like a concert's last note still hanging in the rafters. You stand with him at the rooftop's edge, the storm having softened everything it touched. Lights blink like tired eyes. Across windows, somewhere, someone is still vacuuming a hotel hallway. A cab hums below. But here, wrapped in the last hours of night, you and he belong to nothing but the stillness. You're tired now, but not the kind of tired that demands sleep. It's the kind that comes after holding something precious. A slow body softness. A heaviness in the limbs that isn't from weight, but from release. You feel it in the way your spine eases, in the way your fingers no longer fidget, in how your thoughts slow to a hum. And beside you, he radiates the same sleepiness. Not bored, not fading, just ... Softened, you sit again in the chair. You're wet. Clothes clinging less now. The air warm enough that discomfort never arrives. He sits next to you, his shoulder against yours. Casual now, familiar. There's no rush in your movements anymore. Everything about you has surrendered to the pace of the night. You sip the last of the water from the bottle he found earlier. He runs his thumb slowly along the back of your hand. Not needing to speak this, you think, is what safety feels like. Not the locked door kind of safety. The kind that comes when another human sees you exactly as you are, and stays. You lean your head onto his shoulder again. Not asking, not checking, just landing there as if his body has always been part of your gravity. He shifts only enough to fit you closer. You feel him exhale, long and slow, like his ribs finally believe they can rest. Your eyelids flutter. He notices, getting sleepy. He whispers, you nod without lifting your head. Not sleepy like I want to leave. Sleepy like, I want to stay here forever and forget what day it is. He smiles against your temple. You feel it more than see it. I know that feeling. The wind lifts your damp hair again. Somewhere far off, a plane crosses the sky. And for a moment, the world forgets to ask anything of you. I don't think I've ever let my guard down like this with someone I just met. You murmur almost to yourself. He doesn't answer right away. When he does, his voice is slow, warm. Maybe that's because this doesn't feel like just meeting. You nod because you've been thinking the same. Whatever this is, it skipped the script. It bypassed small talk and slid right into the secret room, the one you usually lock from the inside. The part of you that wants nothing more than to be held gently without being asked for more. The sky is bluing now, just faintly. A strip of color on the horizon, quiet as a secret. But it doesn't feel like an ending. It feels like a breath. You stretch your legs out, your bare ankle brushing his. He doesn't pull away. You don't apologize. The rooftop has become your room. The chairs, your bed, the sky, your ceiling, and him, a quiet you want to fall asleep beside. I'll have to leave at some point. You say softly, not because you want to, but because the words needed to be spoken aloud, like offerings. I know, he says, not asking when, not rushing it, but not yet. No, you whisper, nestling closer, not yet. A bird calls somewhere, one of the brave few who think morning has already come. You smile at the sound. You remember what it's like to be up before the city, to hear its breath before its voice. He takes a deep breath, too. His chest rises under your cheek, steady and slow. I haven't felt this kind of quiet in a long time, he murmurs. The kind that doesn't ache. You nod against him. Because you understand. Some silences are loud with things unsaid. Others hum with longing or fear or expectation. But this one is like water. It holds you. You let your hand rest. On his chest now, fingers splayed, feeling the soft fabric of his shirt and the steady thump beneath it. He covers your hand with his, says nothing. The rooftop is a cocoon now. The world still moves below, but it doesn't require you. Will you remember this? You ask suddenly, the question floating up from some sleepy corner of your heart. Every part of it, he says. And he says it like a promise he intends to keep. The sky lightens a little more, but you don't move. You stay there, sleepy, safe, not in a bed but in something better. In a moment that doesn't demand anything beyond presence. And just before your eyes slip closed, he whispers something so soft it might have been the wind. I didn't know I needed this. You smile. Me either. And then, still soaked from the night but warm from something older, you let your breath slow, not into sleep yet, just into stillness, sleepy with him in a city that for once is quiet enough to let you stay. You don't remember the exact moment you left the rooftop. It wasn't a decision, not really. More like a gentle drift, one shape dissolving into another, 1 hour becoming the next without you needing to acknowledge it. At some point, his hand found yours, not as an invitation, but as a continuation. The way the last note of a song doesn't quite end but trails into silence, you still feel vibrating under your skin. Now you're here, in the room, room 617. It smells faintly of lavender from the soap you used in the tiny hotel bathroom. Your hair is still damp, coiled against the pillow. The air conditioner hums in the corner like an old lullaby machine that no one has turned off in years. And beside you he's there, lying on his back, one arm under his head, the other resting near you but not holding you, not yet. His chest rises and falls like a slow tide, like the world has stopped asking anything of him too. You're both fully dressed, shoes off, lights low, nothing more. The bed isn't big, but the space between you doesn't feel like distance. It feels like breath. You turn your head slightly, just enough to see his profile in the dim light, his jaw relaxed, his eyes closed, not asleep, just stilled. You study him the way people study constellations, not because you're trying to map his story, but because some part of you believes he's always been there, waiting to be noticed. Your cheek presses softly into the pillow. It smells faintly of linen and something else, maybe his cologne, maybe rain, maybe the night itself, folded up and left here. You don't speak, he doesn't either. And still, the silence is full of things neither of you dares to name. What would you even say? What are we? What happens now? Do you feel this too? None of that belongs here. The questions have fallen away like soaked clothes dropped on the hotel floor. What's left is just this your heartbeat, the thrum of the city now distant and softened, the ceiling above you glowing faintly in the shadows. You watch it like it's a sky, each patch of darkness a star. You don't need more. His voice comes gently, finally, not startling, just arriving. You still awake. You smile into the pillow, barely. He shifts slightly, turning toward you. You feel the mattress change shape beneath him. Feel his breath brush your temple. I was afraid I'd talk too much and ruin it, he says. You open your eyes, tilt your head, meet his gaze in the half-dark. You didn't, you whisper. You let it be quiet. That meant more. He nods. You watch his throat move as he swallows. Watch his fingers twitch slightly as if resisting the instinct to reach for you. You reach first. Your fingers slide gently into the space between you, resting on the sheet. He meets them halfway. You lie, like that touching only hands, eyes on the ceiling, no longer waiting for anything. And in the stillness, in the steady breath, in the hush of a city just before dawn, you realize something rare. You don't need to ask what this means. The night has already answered, with every pause, every not touch that felt closer than anything that ever came before. With every moment he didn't try to take more than you offered. With the way he kissed you like silence, like prayer, like the storm had whispered your name and he had heard it. You let your thumb trace the back of his hand. He doesn't move, just lets it happen. And for the first time in a long time, you feel not just safe, but real. You breathe in deeply, exhale slow, the kind of breath that says, I'm here, you're here. We made it through something together, even if that something was just the weight of a single night. The window hums gently, and the first blue light of morning seeps in through the edges of the curtain. He shifts, slowly, pressing his forehead to yours for just a breath of a moment, then back again. You close your eyes, not to sleep, but to hold the feeling tighter. I'm glad you didn't say goodnight at the door, he says. I almost did, you reply. He smiles. You feel it more than see it. But I wasn't ready, you add. Not to end this. He nods again. You feel his fingers tighten slightly around yours. And then, in the final hush, before morning makes you both decide. What comes next? He whispers. You didn't end anything. And that, somehow, is enough. You don't ask for a label. You don't define the story. You don't rewind to look for signs. You just lie there, next to a stranger who isn't a stranger anymore, under a ceiling that now feels like a sky full of memories, breathing in the last quiet before the world wakes up. It doesn't need to be more. It already is. The light arrives without ceremony. No dramatic streaks across the sky, no golden revelation, just a slow, creeping blue that dissolves the corners of the room, one soft breath at a time. The hum of the city has grown louder, subtly, like a chorus warming up. Traffic begins again. Far below, muted through the thick hotel glass, somewhere, someone slams a car door. A distant elevator dings, and you're still here, still lying beside him, still wrapped in the hush that night left. Behind, like a folded note under your pillow, you open your eyes to find him sleeping, peacefully, one arm curved under his head, the other loosely draped where your bodies had found each other in the quiet. He doesn't snore, he doesn't stir. He dreams the way he kissed slowly, gently, without urgency. You let yourself watch him for a while, not with longing, not with regret, with awe, because what happened between you didn't follow a pattern. It wasn't the usual It didn't rush toward some messy confession or linger in empty promises. It just was. Present, whole, real. You watched the night unfold like a page you didn't need to rewrite. And now, in this liminal breath between dark and day, you want to keep it intact. You rise without sound, letting the sheet fall back into place like you were never there. You move gently, not because you're sneaking out, but because the room deserves your softness. You want the space to stay kind. You gather your things, your shoes by the door, your jacket still a little damp, your phone untouched all night. There are no missed calls, no frantic texts, no real world clawing at the edges. The world waited. Somehow it knew. You tiptoe into the bathroom, splash water on your face. Your eyes look softer this morning, a little tired, a little smudged, but honest. You run your fingers through your hair, tie it up without thinking. When you return to the bed, he's turned slightly, one hand now resting on the space where you slept. You stand there for a long moment. You could stay. He would wake and smile, say something quiet and kind. You could kiss again in daylight this time, and maybe talk about coffee, maybe walk out together, maybe even exchange real names. But something in you says don't. Not out of fear, not out of sadness, but because this night deserves to stay whole too often. We try to stretch magic across time. We drag it into daylight, force it into definition. We press it into shape until it forgets what it was. But not this. You don't want this night to become a what if. You want it to stay a truth, a perfect passing moment, fully lived. So you walk to the desk, find the notepad meant for room service. Orders. You tear off a page and write in looping, sleepy cursive. Thank you for letting it be quiet. Thank you for not asking for more. You made the city softer. I won't forget. You don't sign your name. You don't need to. You fold it once and leave. It on the pillow, next to the place where your warmth still lingers. One last glance. He stirs slightly, doesn't wake. You turn, open the door, and slip into the hallway before the sun can ask you to explain. The hallway feels different now. Last night, it was just a passage. Now, it hums with memory. You pad quietly down the carpeted corridor, past the elevator, take the stairs instead. Your footsteps are the only sound. One by one, you descend. You don't cry. You don't replay it all just yet. You just carry it. The morning air outside is clean, new. The sidewalk glistens faintly from the night storm. You walk slow. The city smells like wet pavement and coffee beginning to brew. A cyclist zips by. Someone walks a dog. A bakery opens its shutters with a squeak. The world doesn't know what happened last night, but you do. You hold it inside you like a soft flame, not one that needs feeding, just one that glows at the corner. You stop, look up. The sky is nothing special. A pale blue stretch of ordinary, but you see it differently now. You see the ceiling of a hotel room that felt like the stars. You see lightning in a man's eyes and the hush after. You see a rooftop strung with lights and soaked with rain and full of permission. You breathe in deep. You let it fill you. You don't need to tell anyone what this night was. You don't need to name it. Some things are better left whole, and as you step forward into a morning that doesn't expect you to explain where you've been, you know you won't forget the rooftop, you won't forget the quiet, and you won't forget the way you felt, lying beside a stranger who never tried to make you more than you already were, just held you there as you were, under a ceiling that felt like stars. The light arrives without ceremony, without the grandeur poets often assign to dawn. No sweeping gold, no streaks of fire, just a slow, quiet drift of pale blue seeping into the corners of the hotel room, stretching softly across the sheets, nudging the carpet awake. The city outside begins to stir in its own muted way, the low murmur of distant engines, the hollow echo of footsteps below, the faint trill of a bird foolish enough to believe morning has fully arrived. You don't lift your head yet. You don't want to break the stillness with movement. Your eyes are open, and the world is changing around you, but your body remains where it has been, held within the hush that lingers in the aftermath of something intimate and fleeting and whole. Beside you, he's still asleep, one arm folded beneath his head, the other resting near where your hand had been for most of the night. His face looks softer in this half-light, unguarded, untouched by whatever realities wait for him once the day truly starts. There's a kind of quiet that only comes after trust has passed between two strangers, quiet without tension, without weight. And that's what this room feels like now. Not heavy with unsaid things or unfinished possibilities, but light, gentle, like something complete. You watch him for a while without guilt, without the need to name what he is to you or what the night meant. You watch because you want to carry the image not as proof, not as nostalgia, but as something you lived fully and don't wish to reframe. You shift slowly, drawing the covers aside with the kind of grace reserved for sacred spaces. The movement barely disturbs the bed. He doesn't wake. You step lightly, as if the floor itself remembers where your feet landed last night and wishes to preserve it. You gather your things without rush. Your shoes are near the window, your jacket draped over the desk chair, still damp at the collar. From the rooftop rain, your phone, face down, has remained untouched through the hours. No frantic texts, no missed calls, no one demanding an explanation for your absence. The world let you vanish, if only for a moment. And in that small mercy, you feel a rare kind of freedom in the bathroom. You splash cold water over your face, catch your reflection in the mirror. Your hair is wild from sleep and storm, your skin a little flushed, your eyes softer somehow. There's no urgency in your face, no panic, just that gentle sleepiness that only comes when the soul has finally stopped bracing for impact. You run, your fingers through your hair, twist it into a loose knot, and dry your hands slowly. When you return to the room, you pause near the door. The bed looks different, now slightly rumpled, kissed by shadows, still cradling the warmth of two bodies that didn't need to do more than breathe beside each other. You take it all in, the scent of lavender soap and distant rain, the sound of the air conditioning hum, the thin line of light growing at the edge of the curtain. He's turned in his sleep, one hand now resting where your head had lain. You don't touch him, you just watch for a moment longer. You could wake him. You could whisper something quiet and poetic, leave him with one more kiss, one more soft memory. But something in you knows better. Something in you knows that the beauty of this night, its rhythm, its weightlessness, comes from its shape. A circle, not a thread. A complete moment, untouched by plans or definitions. You want to preserve that. You want it to live in its own stillness, not stretched into something it never promised to be. You walk quietly to the desk and find the small hotel notepad, meant for forgotten room service orders or notes to housekeepers. You pick up the pen and write slowly, carefully, your handwriting loose but deliberate, like you're leaving behind a whisper he can hold. Thank you for letting it be quiet. Thank you for not asking for more. You made the city softer. I won't forget. You don't sign it. You don't need to. You fold the note once and place it gently on the pillow beside him, near the dent your head left in the mattress. One last look, one final breath inside the space that held your shared silence, and then, before anything else can shift or stir, you slip out. The hallway is empty. Early morning still clings to the edges of the hotel like fog, and you move through it with bare footsteps and steady breath. The carpet hushes your steps. The elevator feels too loud, too abrupt, so you take the stairs instead, each one slow, soft, respectful. By the time you reach the lobby, the world is beginning to pulse again. A man in a suit checks his watch near the coffee station. A concierge arranges newspapers. The front door sighs open to let in the scent of rain-washed pavement and a city, brushing sleep from its eyes. Outside, the streets glisten faintly. Puddles gleam like pieces of last night still lingering. A bus rumbles in the distance. A woman walks her dog in silence. You don't rush. You walk slowly, every step part of the same breath you've been carrying since you first stepped onto that rooftop. The air feels light on your skin, even in your damp clothes. The storm is over, but it left something behind, not destruction, not memory, but clarity, the kind that doesn't need a name, the kind that simply is. You stop at the corner, waiting for the light to change, and lift your face to the sky. It's ordinary now, just a stretch of pale morning blue, no stars, no drama, but you see it differently. You see the ceiling of that hotel room, dim and soft. You see the string lights across the rooftop. You see the rain and the kiss and the silence. You see the man who didn't try to own the moment, who simply let it unfold, who held your hand without pulling, who let the night hold both of you. You inhale deeply, let it sit in your chest a moment, then release it with a smile that no one else on the street would notice. You don't look back. You don't need to. Some nights live on because they're never revisited. They're not photos you scroll through. They're not numbers saved in a phone. They're a feeling, a rhythm, a soundless agreement between two hearts that met, paused, and parted without breaking anything. You carry him with you, not in longing, not in sadness, but in that rare, tender way we carry people who saw us exactly as we were, even for a moment. He won't become a wound, he'll become a softness, a quiet place you can return to in thought. When the noise grows too loud, you will remember the rain. You will remember the way he looked at you and didn't try to answer a question you weren't asking. You will remember how it felt to be still, to be seen, to be held without needing to become anything else. And when someone asks you someday about the most beautiful night you ever had, you'll smile a little, say it happened once on a rooftop, while the rain came down, and that no one ever asked what it meant. You don't remember every word. You don't need to. Some nights are felt, not retold. The way his hand stayed beside yours without needing to hold it. The way you looked at each other without asking for a future. The way the rain wrapped around both of you like a secret neither of you had to explain. You left before the sun could ask questions, not because you wanted to forget, but because you wanted to remember it as it was whole, untouched, soft. A night that didn't become a story you told others, but a story that stayed inside you, like a quiet little sky no one else has seen. Sleep now, you're safe here, in the memory of a rooftop, a stranger, and the softest kind of love.